of the public who are leaving the gallery, if they could please do so quickly and quietly as we're moving into the next item of business. Thank you very much indeed. And the next item of business is a members' business debate on motion 15065 in the name of Ros McCall on increasing stroke awareness. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. And I would ask those members who would wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons. And I call on Ros McCall to open the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And I thank members from all of the parties for supporting my motion and allowing it to be debated today. As members are aware, my interest in stroke comes from a personal experience. In 2021, my husband collapsed, and it transpires he had suffered a hemorrhagic stroke. I was aware of FAST, but as he was lying face down on the floor, it wasn't possible for me to see the effect of stroke on him. Thankfully, he was processed with speed, and it was that speed and the skilled hands of the surgeon that saved his life. Having a stroke is a life-changing event. In Scotland, stroke affects around 11,000 people every year, and more than 136,000 people are living with the long-term consequences of stroke. Every day, my husband shows signs of stroke fatigue, which is far more pronounced on busy days when he's had more to do and is battling internally with completing tasks. Ongoing effects are not widely known, and he still gets strange looks when he's having to take a little extra time to walk down the stairs in public or navigate the aisles in a supermarket. The Scottish Stroke Care Audit highlights that stroke is the third most common cause of death in Scotland and the most common cause of severe physical disability amongst adults. Hospital care for these patients accounts for 7% of all NHS beds and 5% of the entire NHS budget. But it doesn't have to be like that. We know that receiving medical treatment quickly is linked to better treatment, reduced damage and improved outcomes. Many of those are clinical, and in that the Scottish Government has not done enough to make that clinical process faster and more available, especially every day in our hospitals. But awareness is also essential. And the simple fact remains that clinical services cannot be efficiently utilised unless we can identify the symptoms of stroke and act fast. Concerning figures in a YouGov poll commissioned by Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland revealed that 39% of adults, and that increases to 53% of 18 to 24-year-olds, were not familiar with FAST. And that is why I want to take the opportunity to congratulate organisations such as the Stroke Association and Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland for their continued work to raise awareness. And a special mention must go today to Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland on their current FAST campaign. FAST illustrates 3 of the most common symptoms of stroke and highlights the importance of acting quickly to call the emergency services. Face. Can the person smile? Arm. Can the person lift both arms? Speech. Can they speak clearly? Time. Time to call 999. This campaign has been solely funded by CHSS, and the promotional activity in the first 2 weeks alone reached a phenomenal 5.4 million people. Regular repetition of public health messaging is absolutely the key. And it's disappointing, however, that it took the action of this charity to launch this public campaign, especially when the Scottish Government's Stroke Improvement Plan of 2023 stated that priority 2 of the plan was awareness raising. And they stated, we will work to understand current public awareness of stroke symptoms, the actions required when they occur, and to support the delivery of FAST campaigns. Now, I recognise the pandemic had an effect on public health messaging, and that a national campaign may not have had the desired effect when the improvement plan was initially drawn up. But I would ask the Minister to reflect that we are now in the last months of 2024. And given the alarming statistics I referred to earlier in relation to the number of adults being aware of FAST, I would ask the Scottish Government to rethink its approach to public health campaigns. Deputy Presiding Officer, I could talk on this for hours, but I want to take the opportunity before I finish to highlight the work of BFAST. The BFAST campaign, or a campaign group, working to expand Scotland's stroke awareness from FAST to BFAST by adding balance and eyes to stroke symptoms. This follows the sudden passing of Anthony James Bundy, who was 53 years old, and he suffered a fatal stroke with symptoms outside of FAST. In this case, clinicians ruled out stroke after various FAST tests were completed, unfortunately leading to that fatal stroke after a 5.5-hour wait in an A&E in a Scottish hospital. The crux of the campaign is that less common symptoms can occur, and in some individuals, such as balance and eyes, which can mean misdiagnosis or delay in treatment. I also understand the concerns that clinicians and charities have that this may diminish the focus on the 3 main symptoms of stroke, and I understand that evidence is not there yet to support BFAST. But it's the yet that matters. Any loss of life that could be prevented from should be looked at seriously. And I look forward to the evidence being collated so eventually that any loss of life or subsequent disability from stroke becomes a thing of the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McCall. We'll now move to the open debate. I would remind members that speeches of up to 4 minutes. We are starting again this afternoon at 2 p.m. and the staff do need time to clear the chamber. With that, I call Evelyn Tweed to be followed by Alexander Stewart. Ms Tweed.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I thank Ros McCall, MSP, for bringing this debate to the chamber and for sharing her own personal story with us. This is a subject I know that is close to her heart. As Ros has highlighted, stroke is the 3rd most common cause of death in Scotland. It's also on the rise. People are surviving longer and those suffering stroke are getting younger. A study in Oxford found a 67% rise in strokes under 55s between 2010 and 2018. They found a significant rise in the proportion of people in professional and managerial jobs having strokes and suggested work-related stress, low physical activity and long working hours could be contributing. Blood pressure is the biggest single factor, and this is something that can be addressed with increased awareness of symptoms of stroke and of the risk factors. Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland has emphasised the importance of regular repetition of public health messaging. And as noted previously, 39% of adults in Scotland are unaware of the signs of strokes. And the FAST mnemonic, among 18 to 24-year-olds, this goes up to 53%. Without this knowledge, the signs of a stroke don't necessarily look like an emergency. It would be good to hear from the Cabinet Secretary on how the Government will support this and, crucially, how we will engage with younger people. We can all play our part, making sure that we use our platforms to share this campaign widely amongst our constituents. The more people who are able to recognise the signs of a stroke and take immediate action, the better. Earlier treatment means a greater chance of recovery, and the first 3 hours are especially crucial. Colleagues have discussed the mnemonic BFAST, and this adds balance and eyes. While this is used in some parts of the US, Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland have suggested that there just isn't enough evidence that it works. They also point to a previous trial of BFAST in Scotland, which led to a high number of non-stroke issues being identified as emergencies.
Stephen Kerr.
Would Evelyn Tweed agree with me that it's better that people present themselves if they suspect they may be having a stroke on the basis of the BFAST diagnosis than not go and end up where sadly too many cases have ended up?
Evelyn Tweed.
I thank the member for the intervention and I hear the point you're making, but I think we have to look at everything in the round, and if clinicians are saying they're feeling overwhelmed by the use of that, I think we need to take that into account. But I'll come on to say more about this. So in turn, this led to stroke clinicians feeling overwhelmed. Importantly, the symptoms in FAST are also specific to stroke. They are unlikely to be anything else. Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland also say that symptoms of posterior strokes, which are more likely to impact eyes and balance, can be mistaken for other things. They need to be triaged effectively to ensure appropriate diagnosis and care. I've heard from my own constituents that it took some time for their own strokes to be diagnosed, and in these cases their symptoms differed from the most common ones. While BFAST may not necessarily be the solution, I'm glad to hear that Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland is working with the Scottish Government to expand their education for professionals. This education will include awareness and understanding of the less common symptoms of stroke that BFAST incorporates. The Stroke Association highlight that stroke is preventable, treatable and recoverable. Indeed, 9 out of 10 strokes are preventable. It is also important to raise awareness of preventative measures. For example, 2 hours of walking per week can reduce your risk of stroke by up to 30%. 2 hours of walking a week, that seems such a small thing to do, but could have great consequences for your health. Quitting smoking, cutting down on alcohol and eating a balanced diet can all contribute to lowered stroke risk. Scotland's 2023...
Ms Tweed, can you bring your remarks to close? I have said that there is a bit of a time pressure at this session.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I look forward to seeing how this work will be taken forward.
Thank you, Ms Tweed. I now call Alexandra Stewart to be followed by Carol Mockin. Mr Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm delighted to contribute to this afternoon's debate, and I commend my colleague Ros McCall for securing the debate time this afternoon for the campaign. Presiding Officer, we know that when it comes to stroke, time is of the essence. Being able to quickly detect a stroke can mean the difference between someone making a full recovery and the loss of someone's life. I therefore am delighted to support and assist the Bundy family, whose BFAST campaign seeks to expand the stroke awareness signals and signs and adding balance and eye to the list of symptoms. When Tony Bundy suffered a stroke in 2023, the limitations of the current FAST test system meant that it was not detected, and when it was too late. Tragically, that meant that Tony Bundy's stroke was fatal. The lessons we can learn from Tony's tragic passing is that early detection of stroke can save lives. It is important that government listen to this campaign and ensure that future stroke policy is always based upon the most up-to-date evidence, Presiding Officer. As the BFAST campaign highlights, there is a wealth of evidence on this issue that needs to be considered. For example, the campaign speaks about the research from SPICE, which found that FAST tests may miss up to 40% of strokes. 40% of strokes. The BFAST test may play an important role in the diagnosis of certain types of strokes as we go forward. Presiding Officer, it is safer for someone to decide to go to A&E and be told that they don't have a stroke than for them to sit at home and dismiss the symptoms that they don't feel they have when it becomes too late because they're looking at the FAST criteria. When then a compelling case for BFAST, I believe that there should be a trial of the criteria within the NHS in Scotland here, and I would add that I look forward to the Cabinet Secretary indicating that in his summing up, because the right decisions at the right time are vitally important that we should have, and possibly one single health board could begin to look at a trial. I know that the Government is keen to listen, and I have met with the Cabinet Secretary and the Bundy family, and that was discussed at these meetings. I hope, however, that the Government is now able to take some action and work with Public Health Scotland and others across health boards to allow for a trial criteria to be looked at. And this trial period could be allowed to be collated within one potential individual health board, so that the benefits of BFAST could begin more data, because data is vitally important here, presiding officer, ensuring that we have the facility and information for those stakeholders and those who work in the system is important. Data could be used to make an informed decision about stroke policy across the whole of the NHS. Presiding officer, regardless of the outcomes of the BFAST campaign, it is clear that we have already seen an effect of shining a light on this potent awareness. For my part, I have felt privileged to help the Bundy family and support the memory of Tommy. And the use of this tragic example gives us all the necessity and ensure. And in conclusion, presiding officer, I have no doubt that members from across the chamber will join me wishing the whole Bundy family well in the future. And I like to close by urging the Scottish Government to hear this campaign and to treat it with the seriousness that it deserves, because ensuring that we can save people is what we should be trying to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. I now call Carol Mochan to be followed by Gillian Mackay. Ms Mochan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you to Ros McCall for bringing this really significant issue to the attention of the Parliament. This is an important debate which I'm sure many members will be able to speak to through personal experience. It is estimated that over half of Scotland's adult population has a close personal connection to someone who has had a stroke. We have heard, because of the time constraints, I'll not go into some of the remarks I was going to make, but we have heard from so many members reasons why urgency is so important. And this is why I feel it is critical that public awareness campaigns focused on identifying stroke symptoms are supported and, of course, adequately resourced. And it will be good to hear from the Cabinet Secretary in his closing remarks. The National Fast Stroke Awareness Campaign, led by Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland, really did offer a chance to increase awareness and the importance of seeking medical help as soon as possible when experiencing symptoms from stroke. In the event of stroke, timing is just so critical. Now, I want to mention my own area. The treatments of thrombolysis and thrombectomy are time sensitive, and so the awareness of these symptoms is so important. And in my own area, my own region, there were 10 patients treated in a local hospital in Ayrshire and Arn, and they received treatment quickly. So I do understand that it is really important to invest in these public awareness campaigns so that people get to hospitals whenever they can. Deputy Presiding Officer, public health awareness campaigns are not only imperative in promoting health behaviours, but greater awareness around symptoms and that link between improving health outcomes. It is imperative that the Government invest in prevention as well to help improve health outcomes across Scotland, especially in our most deprived communities. Those living in Scotland's most deprived areas are more likely to have experienced a major cardiovascular event, such as a stroke. And a key aspect of prevention includes awareness raising. So the Scottish Government must recognise the importance of health awareness campaigns and listen to the charities calling on the Government to deliver these priorities, which they did make in the 2023 Stroke Improvement Plan. We have heard about FAST, a very important campaign. But one of the points I wanted to raise is that while strokes are generally more prevalent among the older population, the number of younger people experiencing stroke is increasing, and so we do need to make that really accessible to that generation and that group. Of course, backing up in regarding the BFAST campaign raised today by Ros McCall in her motion, I absolutely recognise what Ros McCall has been promoting today in the Chamber into the effectiveness of the campaign. It's really encouraging to hear, and I do urge the Scottish Government to explore the effectiveness and look to see how we can make sure we can add this into our prevention and awareness campaign. I do hope the main message from the debate today is clear, that you do need to get action as soon as possible, and that we all want this to be a priority. I do know that, and so I do ask the Cabinet Secretary to respond favourably today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Mockin. I now call Gillian Mackay to be followed by Sanjay Gohani. Ms Mackay.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I too want to thank Ros McCall for bringing this important debate to the Chamber, and I want to echo the thank you to the Bundy family for their campaigning after their own tragedy. I've had the privilege of being invited to their fundraisers and listened to their passion on this topic. For anyone who's listened to both James and his mum talk about Anthony, you would find it very difficult to disagree with the real impact BFAST would have had for them. As we've heard already, stroke is the leading cause of disability in Scotland, with thousands of individuals and families affected each year. Public health campaigns have proven effective in raising awareness and driving behavioural change, and I would like to echo the thank yous that others have made to Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland and the Stroke Association for their work. To increase stroke awareness, we must invest in targeted campaigns that address specific barriers, such as language, cultural differences or misinformation. Working with local authorities and third sector organisations on a local level can amplify that reach and impact. Figures provided by Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland show that each year nearly 11,000 people in Scotland suffer a stroke, with around 136,000 currently living with the ongoing effects. Stroke remains one of the leading causes of disability in our country, yet public awareness of its symptoms remains worryingly low. Research by Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland shows that 39% of adults in Scotland are unfamiliar with the FAST test, which is an essential tool for recognising stroke symptoms. And alarmingly, this figure rises to 53% among younger adults aged 18 to 24. This is especially concerning because quick medical intervention is crucial, as it significantly reduces long-term damage and improves outcomes. And this highlights why raising public awareness about stroke signs and the urgency of seeking immediate help must remain a priority. Both the Scottish Government's Progressive Stroke Pathway and the UK-wide National Clinical Guideline for Stroke emphasise the importance of campaigns like FAST, which play a vital role in saving lives and improving health outcomes. Campaigns like FAST and BFAST play a crucial role in raising awareness of symptoms. FAST focuses on face stripping, arm weakness, speech difficulties and the need for time to call emergency services, while BFAST expands this to include balance issues and eyesight changes as additional warning signs. While BFAST aims to capture a broader range of stroke symptoms, there is disagreement on the implementation of FAST versus BFAST, with many citing a lack of research around the efficacy of BFAST and the increased capacity that using BFAST in A&E could cause. This is why I believe that further research and a further pilot is needed to determine whether this expanded approach can overall improve outcomes. There is learning we can take from the previous pilot, and I don't think that some of the issues that have been raised are entirely insurmountable and should be worked on. A consensus on the best way forward has to ensure that we maximise the impact of saving lives. The Stroke Association have shared some data that paints a stark picture of the challenges Scotland faces in stroke care after people have had a stroke. In 2023, only 1 in 7 eligible patients received a thrombectomy in Scotland. Thrombectomy is 100% cost-effective and saves Scotland's NHS £47,000 per patient. The Stroke Association's Stroke Improvement Plan, 1 year on, highlights key areas of concern from the Scottish Stroke Care Audit. Basic care delivery is falling short. In 2023, only 51% of patients received the stroke care bundle within the national standard, down from 64% in 2019, with NHS Forth Valley performing at a level of just 40.6%. We must invest in more psychological and rehabilitation support for stroke survivors as well, with all health boards falling into amber or red in delivery ratings and too many patients left without 6-month recovery plan reviews. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, we must ensure that investment in stroke care is improved. Better prevention, faster treatment and stronger recovery services will save lives, reduce costs and ensure better outcomes for patients and for their families.
Thank you, Ms Mackay. I now call Sandesh Gohali to be followed by Stephen Kerr. Dr Gohali.
Thank you, and Declaration of Interest as a practising NHS GP. Thank you to my colleague Ros McCall for bringing this crucial issue of stroke awareness to the Chamber. We've already heard 11,000 people annually in Scotland suffer a stroke, with over 136,000 who live with its lasting effects. Stroke is a medical emergency, and recognising the signs early is absolutely essential. Stroke happens when blood flow to the brain is interrupted, which leads to a sudden loss of brain function. Quick action can make all the difference, helping people recover with less brain damage and reducing long-term disability. As a doctor who worked on the hyperacute stroke unit in the Glasgow Royal Infirmary, I've seen firsthand how critical early recognition of stroke symptoms is, and how vital early treatment and rehabilitation is as well. In response to Evelyn Tweed, we only saw confirmed stroke cases, and we know that people who came in the front door were reviewed by a clinician. And so I believe it's essential that it's our job to do the evaluation and not rely on patients' Googling abilities. And when people seek medical help immediately, their chance of recovery are much higher. And unfortunately, awareness of stroke symptoms remains worryingly low. According to recent research that we have heard, 39% of adults in Scotland do not know FAST, face, arm, speech and time. In younger adults, this figure rises to over 50%, and it simply is not good enough, and we need to do more. And the lack of public knowledge can lead to delayed help and devastating outcomes for individuals and family, and that's why raising awareness is essential. Thanks to Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland, we have the FAST campaign, which has been Scotland's first public stroke awareness initiative since the pandemic, and I absolutely applaud them in doing so. The campaign promotes the FAST acronym to help people quickly recognise the three most common stroke symptoms: facial drooping, arm weakness and slurred speech. Final T stands for time, and it reminds us of the urgency of calling for 999, as time is brain cells. And while the FAST campaign has helped many recognise stroke symptoms and act quickly, it doesn't cover all possible indicators. Some people experience symptoms beyond the FAST guidelines, and their stroke goes undiagnosed. One example that we've already heard about today is Tony Bundy. Last year, Tony became seriously unwell while out shopping in Glasgow. His symptoms included balance issues, visual problems, cold sweats and vomiting. And obviously none of these matched the FAST symptoms. Because of this, stroke was not diagnosed. And Tony went hours without receiving proper treatment. And tragically, he lost his life due to this undiagnosed stroke. Since his passing, Tony's son, Councillor James Bundy, has been advocating for expanding Scotland's stroke guidelines to BFAST, which would add balance and eyes as an additional sign to watch for. We do know the danger of false negatives, where stroke goes undiagnosed because it doesn't match the FAST symptoms, and he believes BFAST would lead to greater false positives. The Bundy family believes that if BFAST had been in place, Tony's symptoms might have been recognised sooner, potentially saving his life. Now, some do argue that BFAST could lead to emergency services handling more non-stroke cases, but it potentially saves lives and spares family from heartbreak. Ros spoke about evidence. Well, a meta-analysis of BFAST shows it has a higher diagnostic value with a specificity of 0.85. And if I may be indulged, BFAST symptoms of balance and eyes are things that concentrate upon the posterior circulation, and centres in the US use BFAST. And I think it's absolutely crucial that clinicians are aware of BFAST, increasing stroke awareness. In fact, as a GP, I want people to come to me and have problems with their balance, problems with their eyes in an acute way, because I believe that is my job. It is the job of a doctor to make the decision whether somebody needs a CT scan. Expanding BFAST could help save lives. Every moment in stroke counts. With increased awareness, we can ensure more people get the help they need. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now call Stephen Kerr. Mr Kerr.
Well, I'm grateful for the privilege of speaking in this debate, grateful to Ros McCall for bringing the motion, and grateful for Dr Sandesh Gohali for the speech he's just made. Now, James Bundy, as many of you will know, works in my office, and I'm delighted to be able to welcome James and his mum, Selena, to the Scottish Parliament today in the public gallery. I'm going to give my voice to James. These are James's words. My family and I want to thank all MSPs who have given support to BeFast and celebrate the fact that we support from representatives from all parties elected in the 2021 elections. I also want to express my family's gratitude to Neil Gray and Jenny Minto for meeting us to discuss BeFast, as well as members of the Stroke Association and Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland. This gratitude, however, is mixed with growing frustration. Ever since our first meetings with the Scottish Government and stroke charities, we have felt that not enough consideration has been given to the devastating consequences of false negatives. My family and I feel like donkeys chasing a carrot. Initially, we were told BeFast couldn't be used in Scotland due to a lack of evidence of its effectiveness in live medical settings. When we presented evidence from Australia showing successful trials, the excuse shifted to a lack of Scottish trials. And yet, when we requested a trial in Scotland, there was apparently no appetite for it from the government or the stroke charities. How can we gather Scottish evidence if those in charge refuse to trial BeFast? While my family understand concerns about false positives, we cannot view this issue through that lens alone. The status quo is costing lives. People like my dad are dying because strokes are not being diagnosed. Some stay at home unsure they are having a stroke, while others are left in hospital corridors because a stroke is ruled out by medical professionals. This is not good enough and cannot continue. My dad's story is not unique. Running this campaign, we've spoken to people across Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom who have been let down by the restrictions of FAST. 2 family friends informed about BeFast through my family's campaign received vital care despite having no FAST symptoms. One lost their balance and was diagnosed with a TIA at A&E, while another lost the ability to stand and their eyes were struggling to focus. To the shock of her doctor at NHS Forth Valley, a TIA was confirmed. No FAST symptoms, but they received the treatment they needed because of BeFast. While I am proud of my family's efforts to promote BeFast, running a public health campaign isn't our role, it's the Scottish Government's responsibility. My dad, Anthony James Bundy, was a great man, taken from us far too soon. He missed my wedding last month, his 25th wedding anniversary with my mum, and many more, and the chance to see the business he launched months before his passing flourish. These moments were stolen from him and from my family because of the limitations of FAST, limitations known to those responsible for stroke care in Scotland. My dad was a man who wanted to set things right. Learning from this trait from him is probably the reason why I am working in politics. Expanding FAST to BeFast won't bring my dad back. It won't make things right for my family, but what it will do is make things better for my fellow Scots by helping save countless lives across Scotland. Those are James's words. These are mine. I know that the Cabinet Secretary is a good fellow. I know he's got a good heart. And so I ask him today, on behalf of this family and countless other people in Scotland who are on the wrong end of the misdiagnosis that's occurring because of the lack of awareness of BeFast, to launch a trial. I ask the Cabinet Secretary to launch a Scottish trial of BeFast so we can assess its effectiveness in Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kerr. And I now call on Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray to respond to the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please, Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you very much indeed, Presiding Officer. Can I first of all put on record my thanks to Ros McCall for bringing this motion today and reminding us that stroke is something that could affect any one of us. Indeed, like so many others that have contributed to this debate, I have a very close family experience of someone having had a stroke just this summer. And mercifully, they are making a pretty good recovery, but I also recognise that for too many, including the Bundy family, that is not the case, and that this can lead to tragic and sudden loss. I also welcome the launch of Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland's FAST campaign. They and other stroke charities like the Stroke Association do vital work in raising awareness and supporting people who have suffered a stroke, and I want to thank them for that. I will say at the outset that I recognise and regret that there has been no government-backed stroke awareness campaign in Scotland for some time. And while our financial position does remain difficult, my hope is that the Scottish Government can revisit whether a stroke awareness campaign next year will add value to the excellent work already been carried out by Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland, as well as the work being referenced by others across the chamber of the Stroke Association and other charities. It is clear from colleagues across the chamber that they recognise the importance of raising awareness of stroke. Ros McCall shared her own personal story, for which, again, I'm very grateful. It's not easy to share in public stories of private issues. She also makes a very strong point about the speed of response. That was also something that was raised by others, and reinforced the need for greater awareness of FAST, of face, arm, speech and time. I also support her. I also welcome her support for the importance of public awareness raising campaigns and the public health marketing campaigns. Evelyn Tweed also recognised some of the areas that contribute to a greater risk of stroke happening. Interventions such as lifestyle changes, addressing issues like blood pressure, form a very clear part of the reform and improvement work that I want to see our health service taking forward on a preventative basis. We've spoken very clearly about the need of speed of reaction when the stroke symptoms are present, but I think Evelyn Tweed's point about the preventative requirements of us preventing the levels of stroke are also incredibly important. Of course, I'll give way to
Gillian Mackay.
The Cabinet Secretary also recognised, though, that for some people stroke is not a preventable event, and actually that they need that timely support regardless of whether we can prevent all strokes or not.
Cabinet Secretary.
Absolutely, I do. I recognise that there are circumstances in which that stroke is not preventable, but also that there are contributing factors that make stroke a greater likelihood, and those are areas that we are seeking from a public health perspective to make greater progress upon. But of course I recognise the point that Gillian Mackay makes. Carol Mochan puts forward a very good example in terms of the work in Ayrshire and Arran. It's helpful to hear that. I'm also very well aware that the Minister for Public Health is due to visit thrombectomy services early in the new year. I also agree with her on the point that she makes regarding the interaction of health inequalities in this space. The point that I was making and Gillian Mackay was responding to is absolutely prevalent here, and is an area that I am absolutely determined that we do more to respond to. Again, Gillian Mackay is correct around the mixed views that there are around BFAST. I think that's something that was also referenced by Sandesh Gilhani, and I'll come to... of course I will.
Alexander Stewart.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for taking the intervention. As we know, the Stroke Association and Chest, Heart and Stroke, when they submitted information to the Public Petitions Committee, they asked for further evidence. They needed further evidence, Cabinet Secretary. So surely that gives us the opportunity to actually have evidence and have this trial, which is what this motion today is suggesting.
Cabinet Secretary.
I'll turn to the fact that I am not closed to the campaign that has been raised, not just by the Bundy family but by others, and the points that have been raised by Alexander Stewart, Stephen Kerr and others. I'll come back to that in further response to the debate. Sandesh Gilhani also is right around the quick action making a huge difference, and obviously he knows that from his work in a clinical setting, which is again why I'll turn to our actions shortly. Can I say how grateful I am to Stephen Kerr giving voice to the Bundy family, to James, in this chamber, a voice that I have heard very clearly in the meeting that I had that hosted by Alexander Stewart. But I think the passion, the compassion and the determination of the family, recognised through a very emotional speech that Stephen Kerr gave, gives us all pause for thought. And as I say, I will turn to the actions that we are seeking to make as a result of some of the interventions that have come from the Bundy family. I did meet with the Bundy family in April, along with the Scottish Government's Specialty Advisor for Stroke and Alexander Stewart. I was very struck and moved by their determination to ensure that no one else has to go through what they have experienced. Again, I offer them my very deepest condolences for their loss. It's very clear from the words that have been spoken by Stephen Kerr and indeed the reflections that they gave to me within that meeting, how loved Mr Bundy was and how keenly his loss is still felt. And I recognise that very much for anyone that has lost close family members, particularly in sudden and tragic circumstances. That is felt even more keenly. We all want people who may be having a stroke to be identified quicker so that they can get the care that they need. This includes ensuring healthcare staff are aware of less common stroke symptoms, and I will say more in a moment about what we're doing in that regard. We do not plan to replace FAST with BFAST at this time. It's important I clearly explain why, not least because of the powerful contributions from Alexander Stewart, from Ros McCall, Stephen Kerr and others. Our approach to stroke recognition must always be informed by the best clinical advice, and the clinical advice in this instance is that more evidence is needed before an expert decision can be made on stroke symptoms that are not currently included in FAST. This view is shared by Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland and the Stroke Association, and importantly this is a stance that is also aligned with the rest of the nations in the United Kingdom. We don't plan to run trials of BFAST in NHS boards, but that is a decision for each board, but I do keep that situation under review. But I have asked the National Advisory Committee for Stroke to keep the emerging evidence on stroke awareness screening under review and advise the Scottish Government if new evidence suggests changes may be needed. Let me turn to the action that we are taking now, and that comes directly after the meeting that I had with the Bundy family. After that meeting, asked the Specialty Advisor for Stroke to review the stroke awareness training for clinical staff, a point that was raised by Sandish Gulhani and also by Evelyn Tweed. As a result, we are funding new training to help staff recognise stroke symptoms, which will be delivered by Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland, and that includes recognising less recognisable symptoms, as was asked for by Evelyn Tweed in her contribution. This will be available to GP practices, to emergency departments and to the Scottish Ambulance Service. And although focusing on FAST, this resource will cover less common stroke symptoms like blurred or double vision and loss of balance. The Minister for Public Health and Women's Health has written to all NHS boards to ask them to encourage their staff to sign up when the training becomes available. We've also carried out polling to understand the current level of public awareness of the FAST symptoms, and this will inform our future approach to awareness raising on stroke. Furthermore, recognising that tests like FAST and BFAST can never be 100% accurate, we are also supporting the Scottish Ambulance Service to explore using video call technology to diagnose hyperacute strokes more accurately. So, to conclude, Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government recognises the importance of ensuring that less common stroke symptoms are not missed. The harrowing, the tragic and traumatic case of the Bundy family is an example of that. We are taking action to improve education and support more accurate diagnosis, and we will continue to monitor the evidence base on stroke recognition to ensure that our approach is informed by the best available evidence. I want to once again thank everybody for contributing what has been a very valuable and moving debate, and all those that have contributed to the campaign getting to this point. I'm very grateful for that. The actions that are being taken by staff, by campaigners, are helping to save and change lives, and I'm immensely grateful for everyone's contribution.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes the debate. I suspend this meeting until 2 p.m. Thank you.